So back by popular demand, here we go again with an occult hunter's deathlog. Now, last time around we were in South Korea. This time we're in Louisiana, and things are going to get very, very weird very quickly, so hope you're up for this one. Anyway, as always, I'm going to put the newest episode to the end of the video, and for those who haven't been here before, you can just go ahead and listen to episodes 1 and 2 before we get to the new one. So, without further ado, here we go with An Occult Hunter's Deathlog by Forest Has Eyes. Log name, PEXU Deathlog. Author, Nolan, Dwight. Call sign, November 1. Oh, we all thought it was a joke at the mission briefing. It was back in the mid-80s when many of us were group veterans from tours in Indochina and assisting the Mush in Afghanistan. However, when the FBI liaison showed us the slides, some of us were sick to our stomach. None of us could believe it. All across Minnesota, homesteads, cabins, ransacked and torn apart by what was officially just non-connected encounters with bears and wolves. However, unofficially, the culprits were ape men that were near 8 feet tall and weighed 1,000 pounds. We all thought it was just myths. Bigfoot sightings were becoming more and more frequent, though. But to us, we're about as grounded as you could come, with all of our training and time on the line. That was until he showed us those that were killed. Man, woman, young or old, even children. Gnawed on, torn apart, mutilated. Something about that made my blood run cold. These weren't myths, they were real. Living things that were in our backyards, and were killing indiscriminately. From there on, we all knew what we had to do. We just didn't know what kind of hell we were walking into. 76 hours of straight hell and war. Wasn't just 1 or 2. It was a family of 7. I'll never know truly what we saw out there, what pulled our comm sergeant into the trees and tore him limb from torso, but I know this. There's things out there that have been here much longer than we have, and they challenge our claim as the dominant species of this planet without breaking a sweat. The governments, all of them, know about them, and it's not just in North America. It's in Africa, Europe, Asia, everywhere. What I do know is that sightings of cryptids have become less frequent and more bathed in skepticism. What I do know is that the amount of people disappearing has quadrupled. We are fighting a war, and we are losing. That's an excerpt from an anonymous source within the United States Special Operations community. The truth of what he says has been talked about in speculation. However, I've learned firsthand it was a premonition of what this generation's warfighter's next opponent was going to be. It's no secret that we live in a very strange world. Places like the Appalachian Mountains have been around as long as Pangaea has been formed, and half underwater. The Western Plains are filled with things that are taboo just to speak about, let alone go looking for. The forests of Europe are filled with tales of demons that stretch back to shadow men attacking and killing Roman soldiers. The deserts of Africa consume the fiercest foes and leave nothing but scraps of their uniforms and black strings as omens. There's a reason, no matter the distance, that every single culture has their own interpretation of the devil, dragons, and shapeshifters that rhyme and seem far too, similar. Honestly, it's amazing that our species has made it as far as we have. However, what is happening is far from over. Honestly, as technology has advanced, our curiosity has deepened. We've gone to further and further lengths to peer exactly where we shouldn't. NATO has been fighting a secret war for decades, and their enemies aren't human. So you're probably wondering, hey author, this is so secret, why are we just hearing about it? And how are you able to talk about it? Well, put simply, I'm in an interesting situation, so you don't have to... Look, my name is Dwight Nolan. You won't find much looking for me, as I've been scrubbed from the larger part of the internet and world, with only a few scraps left behind. I was in the United States Army for 10 or so years before I took to security contracting. It's there that I was a security guard who was hired to protect an estate. But things went south, very south. North for a bit, then went lateral. It was complicated, but that was years ago. Now, well, I got out of the army for several specific reasons. 4 tours to Afghanistan had left its wear and tear on my mind. One of the perks of being part of the most deployed unit in the US Army's 10th Mountain Division. Climb to glory and all that garbage. I wanted to get back to the normal world and live a normal life. Normal, hey? What a fucking fool I was. Turns out this world is 9 meals from anarchy and 2 feet from the abyss, and those who control everything pay a pretty dime for men like I was to man the wall and keep the monsters at bay. Here I was thinking it was metaphorical. There's a reason explorers wrote, "Here there be dragons," in the hopes of warding off anyone from venturing where many of their friends hadn't returned from. However, the indomitable human spirit is coupled with the unstoppable human curiosity that has resulted in 100,000 people going missing every single year. Well, where do I factor into all of this? Well, shortly after my southern Missouri hell ride, I got an offer from a suit named Javier. I still don't know if that's his real name or an alibi, and I really don't care. I sure shit didn't care back then. You know what's the hard part about this world? Making a difference takes blood, sweat, and tears, and it seems futile if the elite are working against you. Well, after I got a termination letter, big fat check, and got told to make myself scarce or find myself disappeared, I did, and I felt like a coward. I moved out west for a while, laid low, but no matter how much I tried, no amount of denial or alcohol could smother the conflict I had internally. And so, after 2 years, I decided to accept the offer Javier had made me just over a year later. But in my stomach formed as I knew I was casting myself back into the same rabbit hole few ever got a chance to crawl out of. But, well, let's just say I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if I didn't. So I've been gone for quite a few years. It's been a roller coaster, but it's been productive. That being said, coming to terms with everything hasn't been the easiest, and I need some way to process everything. So I made a request that was surprisingly accepted, to catalogue what's been happening. Why was it greenlit? Well, your guess is as good as mine. Maybe they want to make sure whatever is leaked is in line with what they want, or maybe they don't think anyone will believe it anyways. Maybe Javier realizes that sooner or later I was going to end up whistleblowing anyways, so he wanted to ensure it was sanctioned for a better look. Either way, here we are, and boy, I've got a lot to say. But it's best if we start at the beginning, for me at least. The group I work for is called PEXU, Paranormal Extermination Unit. I know, very clever. You'll find it listed on no public documents, government websites, or dossiers, but it's a very real multinational organization with a serious amount of funding put behind it. A wise man once said, "Designation means authorization." PEXU has a lot of units behind it. Some you may have heard of. 4th Special Forces Group based out of Fort Bragg. They were the first to be inducted and assigned, and they've laid a lot of the groundwork for what was to come. We've got my old friend Nicholas Walker to thank for that. Well, there's been other instances. A group of Danish frogmen went dark in the marshes not too long ago. Polish Grom have been on the front line of this brutal war, and the only thing holding it back from Europe. There's been other occurrences, with the 22nd SAS having gotten into something particularly hairy, though I'll let the Brits tell that tale. They'll never shut up if I don't. There's also a SEAL team that had to go dark recently, Team 4. Hopefully they'll be back. Well, that being said, nothing, everything, can or should be handled by the wholesale special operations units. And sometimes there's a threat occurring that can be handled by less personnel, and right now, we're strapped, and our big guns are always getting sent out. Can't always bring a machine gun to a fistfight. I mean, I would, but anyways. Solo missions are a common occurrence, as there are a lot of single PEXU operators, usually people who can travel, have jurisdiction over a large area, or can conduct them without making ripples, but always those who have dealt with an incredible amount of shit in the darkness and come out the last one standing. If you hunt monsters, there's a good chance you're going to end up in a trap one day, surrounded, So if you get sent, you better be able to unfuck yourself or fuck up whoever can on the way down. The career of a solo isn't without its kinks, and by God, mine was, well, that's probably a good place to start. The beginning. Dossier, Clown House. Oh, I could feel the blood pumping through my veins full force when they sent me the information on my first target package. I'd regretted not taking the opportunity from PEXU for so long that I blamed myself for every missing person and mutilated body that was found 200 yards in forsaken ground. So, when they got back to me and I finally had the chance to jump into things again, I was both fired up and absolutely freaking terrified. Why? Well, let's recount. The last time this happened, I was pushing mid-30s, running through the woods, nearly getting caught by every Midwest Wendifucker that popped out of the brush. Well, despite my pretty stacked resume in helping to defeat the sizable event, that my direct contact at PEXU called one of the most extreme outbreaks we've seen in a while. Well, it only takes one. So I sat there in my quiet home, my fax machine slowly printing out the pages. I knew there was no going back. My first mission saw me dispatched to southern Ohio, where a suburban town was being attacked by a clown. Yeah, I know, but just trust me on this one. The anomaly was first seen manifesting itself towards the outskirts and less populated areas, seeming to be like a bad rerun of the clown pandemic that occurred a decade or so ago. Except, where locals found this creepy yet funny, it stopped being humorous when they discovered the body of a child in a nearby creek. One day the clowns stopped appearing at the edges of town and started making their way in. Locals would describe the chime of an ice cream truck, except wrong in every way. The only photo available was a half-blurred image taken as someone hid beside the window. The exterior was rusted, paint dry and warped to all hell, as what was probably blue and yellow looked like teal and decay. And the audio of the soundbite, well, let's just say I never thought some bullshit jingle would give me chills, but here I am. It was described as off-putting, though people mostly avoided it until the kid in question managed to sneak out and apparently run up to the ice cream truck and was never seen again, alive. I remember reading that shit, sitting there white-knuckling the page. The good and bad about being in this industry is that you're extremely informed, and if your intel can help it, you won't miss a detail. The bad is you get every detail. The kid's name? Toby. He was around 8 and some change. Police found him under the bridge face down on a rock bed, with all of his clothing stained. He'd been gone for several days, yet his clothes, apart from being soaked, seemed relatively clean, except for when they turned him over. He was drained of blood and hollowed out. Clinically so, with a level of precision and brutal efficiency that showed this wasn't just some deranged maniac. Local police were dispatched in an attempt to hunt it down. A neighborhood watch was put out for the horrifying tune of the truck, and around a week and a half later, someone called in. One of the pages was the transcript of the call. Dispatch Unit 0576. Yes, 911, what is your emergency? Caller, redacted. Hello, this is from 226. I'm calling you about that truck with that serial killer. He's right down the block outside. Okay, understood, ma'am. Can I have a location? Yeah, he's on the intersection of, and he's heading east. He's moving, but couldn't be more than 5 miles an hour. All right, ma'am. I've got police on their way. Stay inside and keep out of sight. Someone just knocked on my door. The truck just stopped it. Ma'am, can you hear me? Local police units arrived, attempting to stop it minutes later after the truck stopped in the middle of the road. However, people in nearby houses could only hear screams, followed by over 3 dozen gunshots. When more backup showed up and people sheepishly emerged from under their beds, the truck was gone and 2 smashed, blood-covered and empty police cars were left behind. Police then ordered a stand down, and while civil servants stood down, houses started turning up empty. People got vengeful. All who acted on such vengeance went missing. It then eventually tricked up to us, to me. As you can imagine, I stopped chuckling at the notion of this thing being a killer clown right after it decided to be a child murderer and a cop killer. I had some hints of what to bring in terms of my kit from people in the industry. The Hunters Guild recommended me to bring a standard allotment of salt, silver, iron, and some holy water. Others recommended I bring different EpiPens full of antioxidants and nerve agents. The same kind I had to keep in the army to protect me from a freaking chemical attack, which filled me with all kinds of warm and fuzzies. And of course, my own loadout, which was one of the benefits of being on the payroll of a coalition that could get you pretty much whatever you proved you needed. I rode into town on a rainy-ass day. Vehicle provided was a grey SUV with full blacked-out windows and enough armor in the doors and engine to make every turn hydroplane, and every acceleration sluggish. But it was comfort knowing if whatever this thing was going to jump on me, I'd hopefully be okay within the first few minutes. Blacked-out windows kept everything in the vehicle nice and concealed, which helped because I rolled out in full kit. A plate carrier sporting magazines, first aid, and all other sorts of accessories they could give me. On my hip was a Glock 19X, and on my passenger seat rested an MK-18. It's a 5.56 rifle, much like the AR-15 or M4, but with a shorter barrel at 10.3 inches. It might not be everyone's choice, but Eugene Stoner has saved my ass more times than I can count. The plan was simple, although probably stupid. I was going to head to the area where most of the sightings occurred and wait there. When, if the truck showed up, I'd assess what it did and maneuver. If not, time to go trudging through the woods. I hoped for the former because the latter was going to be a painful trip down memory lane. So I slow-rolled and crept through the rainy streets in my state-sponsored mine-resistant spook car, keeping watch as I headed towards a nice, silent road towards the southeastern area of the town, hugging the dense woods. I cracked open a Red Bull and waited. For 10 minutes, which turned into 2 hours and 10 minutes before I even realized. My hands white-knuckling the steering wheel. I was frustrated. My first hit, and I didn't even know how to actually find the thing. Here I was camping off the side of the road on the government dime. A pit in my stomach formed as I debated with myself what to do. And then I heard it. Like someone was trying to sing while they were being cut into by steak knives and doused in salt. It came from behind, causing me to look through the tinted windows, and there I saw it. The mouth of the truck looked like a horrifying gaping maw as it slowly crept down the empty street. I took one last swig of my caffeine courage as I reached over and grabbed my rifle. The truck slowly moving up as I slid my Pelter headset over my ears and turned on my MBITR radio. This is November 1. I've got OP4 actual in my sights. Break. Approximately 30 meters to my rear and closing. Holding position inside my vehicle. Over. On the other end, the calm voice of a man back at our Tactical Operations Center came through, albeit a bit choppy as the dense rain was having its way with our communications, trying to travel over multiple states. November. May 18th. I muttered and shook my head, then froze as the thing passed right by me. I swear just looking at it gave me a migraine, and not just because it looked like a hunk of rusted trash. It rolled down the road like a predator, stalking its territory, which now ran through the town, before pulling off. Or maybe it was pure luck, or the tinted windows that it didn't notice me. Or maybe it did and it wanted me to, but, well, I ended up following it. My gut told me to stay put, wait for backup. But then I quickly reminded myself that there was no backup. I was these people's saving grace. No one else, just me. I put the car into drive and trailed the thing around 200 yards behind it, my rifle between my legs just in case it stopped and I would have to engage in the same circumstance that poor lady on the 911 call did. But it didn't. The drive was long, so I had to match its pace, which was slower than even my vehicle wanted to go, and through the mini-monsoon I followed it until it trailed off onto a backwards path. Thank God for whoever gave me this vehicle for including four-wheel drive and tires with all of the traction. The mud-soaked roads were lined with gravel that barely helped any, but as it started to bend, the truck went out of view, leaving me with only the bending tree lines and a forest that I swear was watching me. Eventually, I came to the top of a hill and stopped. Down a path that was flanked on both sides by tall trees, opened up to an overgrown area of ferns and tall grass, where a decrepit shack stood amongst stone and other rubble. From the top of the hill I inspected with a magnifier mounted just behind my Ecotech sight. I had two avenues of approach now: straight down the road or creep through the woods. I was vastly better armed than a small-town cop. However, four of them, including several armed locals, were dispatched with ease. I had to be smart, so, against my better judgment, I put on my dark green Gore-Tex jacket underneath my plate carrier and stepped out into the pouring rain. Through my radio, I could hear Maine trying to contact me. To no static and broken up avail. Against my better judgment, I turned the volume down. If nothing else, the headset would protect my ears from a hail of gunfire. I approached the steep decline into the hill going down into the woods, and carefully grabbed onto trees to avoid falling down and busting my shit. Right before I slipped on a branch that I thought was sturdy, which betrayed me and broke, causing me to stumble, shoulder check a tree, fall down, and, bust my shit. I could hear the forest now. Welcome back, Dwight. Regardless, I kept moving, my eyes checking the surrounding trees as I inspected the canvas of greens, browns, and blues. If it was a clown, it would stick right out, hopefully, but I wasn't taking any chances. Every footstep was methodical, every glance was purposeful. I could feel myself getting soaked, but it didn't matter. I was slowly gaining ground as I saw the shack come into view. A trait you never expect to pick up in the military is smell. Is there a fire nearby? Is the belt on the Humvee burnt and about to snap? Is that water or gasoline and, is there an enemy combatant nearby? One thing I picked up in Afghanistan is that almost all of the time your enemy didn't shower. There were many instances in which we could smell the putrid and stink of their bodies before we even saw them, warning us that the next corner may or may not have a true believer behind it. As I approached the house, I smelled not just death, but rot. The kind of smell a body gives off when it's day 5 of defending a COP in the mountains. There's a fallen combatant halfway down that's been baking in the sun, but you can't go move him away, so you just have to sit there and endure it while getting shot at. Had I not the iron stomach of a man so desensitized by it for years, I would have gagged. Instead, as I approached the shack, I realized this was the place. I quickly descended upon the truck, approaching the back door. I whipped it open and saw no one was there. Then I got a huge blast of putrid stink. Inside, the floor and walls were lined with blood, and what I had to theorize was fecal matter. Glyphs and drawings, incoherent, were scribbled in the brown and black substance all over the cabinet, floor, and fridges of the ice cream truck. Assessing no one was inside, I made for the structure. Brown wood and rusted metal lined the shack. A mess. Well, the front door had long since caved in, and I was confused for a moment on how to enter. That is until I spotted an old stone stairwell leading down, with the top of the structure a hollow mess. I realized this might be my only way down. My wet boots carefully stepped, trying to make as little noise as possible as I headed into the dimly lit cellar ahead. Well, the smell got worse, and even as my eyes started to water from it, I pushed through. A strange warmth could be felt, only adding to my frustration as the humidity of the rain from the summer day outside was making me irritated as all hell. Despite this, my rifle was raised as I peered past a corner that led left and followed the amber lights of candles. Through my pelters, I could hear the crunching of bone and the tearing of flesh. And I turned a corner to see it. Oh, it was the clown. At least, it was trying to look like one. The thing had a blue man outfit with white and red sleeves. It was standing on all fours, and its legs seemed to bend the other way, appearing much like an insect or a thing, as its body actively crunched and contorted as it stood over a body. I looked around. Human skin hung flayed from the walls and ceiling. Of all ages, of all races, sex, horrifying caricatures of smiles, makeup, and other glyphs, and writing had been carved into its skin or painted on. All of them were mouth agape, as probably was their last moments, screaming. Oh, they were all screaming. My heart was pounding out of my chest as my eyes snapped back to the thing. Its hands crept over the body. Black and rotten bone seemed to protrude and break through the skin as it adapted and consumed the body whole, peeling the skin off as it consumed the flesh and left only the skin and bones. And then it stopped. Its head spun around at an impossible angle and stretched, its jaws biting down as the horrifying pile of tendons and muscle that once was a human dropped to the ground. Its eyes were milky white with pinprick irises. We both stared at each other. Honestly, I think it may have been a little shocked to see me. That would last about a millisecond, though, as it unhinged its jaw to reveal several rows of intersecting teeth and jaw mandibles within, frilled insides as it roared the screams of all of its victims. In that moment, muzzle raised, toe-to-toe with this killer of men, I vividly remember the only thing I could think to say. Holy fuck. The thing sprung up and leaped, its enormous body somehow moving like that of a grasshopper in speed. I had to dive out of my way and to the left. It came face to face with the concrete of the basement wall as I could hear the thud and crunch of the impact. I took aim and fired. My short-barreled muzzle sending shockwaves bouncing off the walls, deafening whoever might hear it, and I think even as it howled, a 5.56 was sent into its center of mass. But the thing just turned and leapt at me. I kept my distance, firing round after round as I put the stone pillars and columns between me and it. However, like some sort of freaking centipede, it just coiled past, its mouth wide as it leapt for me. Oh, get bent, I shouted, as I butt-stock whipped the thing, causing its head to snap back into the pillar as I shuffled away. Well, my weapon went dry. I whipped the new magazine out and messily shoved a new one in, the bolt going ka-chink, letting me know that she was ready. And the creature was pouring blood by this point. A disgusting yellow sludge poured out onto the floor as it howled at me and proceeded to run. While it did, it seemed to retract, condense. I didn't even know if those are the right words to describe it. And it took off in its enlarged, elongated, broken joint form, and when it got to the stairs, it looked like a feral man-clown running on all fours. Well, I took off after it, but god damn, it was fast. Between all of the dance hijinks, keeping it away from me in the basement, I was breathing heavy as I ran up the stairs. Then I slipped a bit, banging the hell out of my knee. Of course, even while battling 10th Circle evil, the elements decide to kneecap my chances, literally. Well, I can also wholeheartedly endorse that my $50-something knee pad inserts did not help. Regardless of the sight of it taking off fast enough to cause wind as it tore past Flora, due west into the woods, I sprinted after it. I took aim, firing shot after shot. The snap of my suppressor followed by flashes of yellow and howls that could be heard, letting me know I was getting rounds on target. It sprinted up a slight hill, my feet dragging in the mud, and I was getting winded by this point. By the time I got up, all I could hear was shuffling, howls and giggles, the laughter and whispers. I looked around, scanning with my rifle, with my hands shaking from all of the adrenaline. Oh, the only thing I could muster was, where in the hell did he go? The sound of the massive snapping of branches, followed by a million-toothed clown jumping right for me from my right, gave me my answer, caused me to stagger back straight into a tree. Mother of... is all I managed out as the back plate of my plate carrier hit a tree, cranking the absolute hell out of my neck and causing it to shake the upper branches as a hail of water fell on me. I fired off more rounds at the speeding form, flicking it to full auto and letting loose as it vanished into the brush. The sound of my rifle jamming from the rain as it tried to load the round caused my heart to launch into my throat. I looked down. It was one mother of a double feed and no amount of finger-fucking would get it in time. I looked to see the thing was maybe 15 meters from me now. I transitioned to my handgun, sighting in the red dot on the thing and firing off shot after shot. The angle it launched itself at, it took damn near every round head on the face. I leapt out of the way as it slammed right into an old oak tree. I spun around, firing into the thing as it writhed, tearing chunks out of its arm, legs, and back as the clown suit was a little more than scraps on a yellow, putrid, decaying body. It slumped down and rolled over to look at me. Well, by this time, I slammed my handgun back into its Kydex holster. In a matter of seconds, my adrenaline allowed me to clear the magazine, clear the chamber, and successfully load a new round, aiming my Eotex dot right on the thing. Its massive jaw seemed to be giving away as the frills began to melt. Its eyes were a dark black and blue, falling apart as the left side of the head was actively in several pieces now. The thing paused. A mound of yellow sludged and digested red person flew out onto the ground in front of it. But I didn't waver. I don't know why I didn't just kill it. Maybe the same reason, after a slugfest, a boxer waits a moment as their opponent struggles in the corner. And then the thing spoke. Its voice was high-pitched, several voices together, bleeding in as it stared at me, growling before saying, "I just wanted..." I didn't give it the chance, as I flicked my weapon to full auto and laid into it, every round making contact with what I hoped was a brainstem in its almost humanoid neck and head, painting the tree yellow, black, and red. As the thing slumped over, now little more than a pile of was an anomaly, I caught my breath. It then twitched, and I fired off several more rounds, almost half a magazine in total. Okay, can we stop with this fuckery now? This entire situation already gave me a migraine bigger than the West Wisconsin. I let my rifle hang as I stood there. I had done it. I topped off my Glock 19, pure instinct compelling me to never take my eyes off it as I turned the volume back up on the MBITR and tried again. This time I got a slightly okay connection. Maine, this is November 1. Radio, check. November 1, this is Maine. I read you, Lima Charlie. Requesting sitrep. Maine, op 4 actual is down. I say, op 4 actual is down. Prepare for proof of Echo X-ray. Echo X-ray meaning exterminated. Mounted to the front of my plate carrier was a phone explicitly used for communications, team coordination through markers and maps, and, in this case, snapping a photo and sending it back to TOC. Within seconds, Maine responded. Roger, November 1. Keep your ATAC on. Local liaisons en route to secure the area. I got a week or so to detox from that mission, and it brought back some old memories. I remember the feeling of post-adrenaline after my first firefight. Sitting on the gun in the mountains, the cold wind seemed even harsher after my blood's heat dropped. Sitting out on the porch of my house, overlooking the wide-open plains with the Rockies in the distance, as my hand calmed, I felt the same clarity I felt then. Personally, in what I thought was going to be the twilight years of my career, I got in a plot of land in my house smack dab in the middle of around several hundred miles of nothing. For the year prior to me joining PEXU, it was my place of exile. After the week I'd just had, It'd be my oasis for the next several years. Dossier: Situation Whiskey. It was around 0500, also known to non-military, non-Europeans, non-Pacific as 5 a.m., known to me as early as hell in the morning. Despite this, I got a call from my contact at PEXU, Montgomery. He's like mid-20s-ish, full-blooded English, judging from the accent. This also probably makes sense as to why he decided to wake me up at the ass crack of dawn. "Good morning, Nolan. I've got an assignment I need you for," Monto said. I rubbed my eyes, looking at the clock, muttering, "It can't wait a few hours." "It's going to take you a few hours to get there, Nolan." He laughed and quipped, "You're also the only one close. We've got a situation whiskey we need you to take care of." Oh, whiskey. Now that caused me to sit up, now much more awake. "What you're talking about?" "You'll see in your target package." I gazed at the fax machine as it slowly printed out every letter of data as I sipped on my Red Bull, the burning of my brain being deprived of sleep, a familiar reminder of the good old COF at 0300, weapons drawn at 1300, step off at 2000. Once it completed transferring, I digested it all. A recent massacre had occurred at a park in northern Minnesota that had every responding agency on high alert. In the aftermath of a particularly bad flash storm, state police reported a family of 4 going missing after being caught out in remote land. After conducting a search, they found them. Well, what was left of them. "Images attached," Montgomery said on speakerphone as I flipped through. "Just be advised, they're detailed." They were. You know what I learned most about animals? Whenever they kill, they do it for necessity. Survival, hunger, vital areas attached. When something is torn apart, it was done out of rage, out of spite. Animals don't have that in them. Not most, and not truly. None in the area of this. When a family of 4, including their 2 children, are, found in multiple pieces over the land area of 3 square kilometers, you know it's not coincidence. So what separates this from some serial killer? One of the hermits or forest people lurking in the rogue air caves with an SOG hatchet. It was the fact that 2 of the state troopers sent out to look for them ended up in body bags. The troop they were a part of ordered a frickin' stand down. Now that does not happen. When cops lose one of their own, they light a torch and it means war. When law enforcement pulls back, it knows they're up against something out of their league. So what was it? And how the hell was I supposed to match it? All points and evidence, including this being on Algonquin territory, point to this being a situation whiskey. For those of you who don't know, the Americas are an ancient place with their own set of rules, their own gods, and their own devils that just so happen to be taking up real estate with us. Just so happens you can accidentally invoke the fuckers if you speak their names. As such, PEXU enforces a series of codes to avoid such ripples. But since this is a log, you have already probably deduced what it is. Situation Whiskey stands for a Wendigo. What do we know about them? Truly? They've been documented in Native American folklore since before the first explorers who came here were a twinkle in their parents' eye. They're apex predators, and there's a reason even why the Hunters Guild, spanning many different reservations and game warden detachments, doesn't dance with them. If they don't have to, they won't. Well, there's a reason when Vikings went inland into ancient America, they left for a reason they refused to speak of. Something that was too much for them, that's still too much for most. They're incredibly fast, lethal to the point of being a weapon of mass casualty production, and if you hear them, they already know you're there. Usually we send multiples out, but we're on an all-points alert right now. I'm sorry, Nolan, but you're going to have to go this alone. Keep comms, I'll be right there with you. Ah, yes. Send the story of the newly hired NATO-sponsored hitman tangoing with the Native American cannibal demon that just gutted an armored police cruiser not 18 hours prior. Someone either had it out for me or had extreme confidence in me. Both were impossible to differentiate. Needless to say, my approach to the target area was tense. Through the sea of brown, green, and yellow flanking either side of the highway, I couldn't stop seeing things. A slight movement here, a flash there. I was driving straight into enemy territory, and I knew it. I pulled up to the side in the middle of the day. The entire interstate road cutting through uninhabited Minnesota near it was closed off due to storm damage. But I knew better, and upon breaching the perimeter, I immediately felt like I was being watched. Well, I knew I was. Fucking goddamn it. I found where the state police had gotten attacked at. My blood ran cold. One of their SUVs was completely gutted from the right side. The other had its front door torn off and strewn over the road. I grabbed my rifle, this time settling for an 8K platform. The higher-powered 7.62 would do wonders more than the AR would against a foe that could shrug off from the amount of brass I counted on the ground. Nearly 210 rounds of 5.56 and too much 9mm. I stepped out and heard nothing. It was the middle of summer in a sector which had more birds and trees than it did people, and it sounded exactly what the peaks of PEXU did. I surveyed the area, blood and gore long since drying up on the ground. I bent down and grabbed one of the rifle brass from the asphalt of the road, moving it around the black leather of my mechanic's gloves. She'd had gone cold, long cold. The angle of their cruisers meant that they'd been able to set up a defensive position, and yet they were still put to the sword. Well, let's hope old Kalashnikov had demonic warfare in mind when he developed his rifle platform. Regardless, I continued on. I stayed off the trail, calming my footsteps as I followed the trail of blood. The state police hadn't gone down without a fight, and the gutted trees, brass, and blood showed. Still, no sound meant it was in my area. The burning sensation told me it was watching me now. This thing had taken out 2 armed state lawmen, and I was supposed to stop it alone? Well, I need to stop it. I was losing my nerve. Though to be fair, I lost my mind by agreeing to this. I stopped at the bottom of the trail, a large ditch where I found one of them, what was left. At the bottom of a small divot, a crater thing in a clearing. Half of the trooper remained as their light tan uniform was stained both red blood and black. Emphasis on half, as only one of their arms was visible and their legs were nowhere to be found. Intel we'd gotten stated that they were able to get their downed officers out. Yet here she was, rotting in the forest. I don't know whether to feel bad for the troop detachment being unable to extract what was left of her, or sickened at them for lying and abandoning one of their own. It was a common occurrence when working for the government. I had to stop and pause for a moment. The gore and the sound of them still gripping their rifle out of rigor mortis as their dead tendons were damn near popping through their dehydrated flesh. Well, it almost made me lose my shit. The distant sound of a scream spurred me to life, though. MSP, make yourself known. The distorted sound of a female sounded off throughout the woods in the distance. MSP stood for Minnesota State Patrol. At first, I turned, raising an eyebrow. What were they doing here? Why was their presence not relayed? The only vehicles by the road were, well, only the destroyed ones. A pit formed in my stomach as the voice called out again, this time sounding female. MSP, make yourself known. Same inflection, same tone, same voice. I looked back to the deceased body of the trooper, my gloves gripping the half-mutilated skull as I flipped it over. Yeah, definitely female. Oh, shit. I could hear the distant sounds of branches snapping, breaking. Something was heading at me like a cruise missile. A horrifying, retching roar was there that caused every part of my spine to shake as the snapping of trees and branches sent my fight-or-flight mode into activation. I'd requisitioned something, an asset just for this that I knew I needed to tip. I dropped my assault pack, quickly pulling it out. A small green rectangle. I shoved its spokes into the grass and dirt near the trooper, saying a prayer of forgiveness as I placed a blasting cap connected to a spool of wire into it, and untangled it as quickly I dove through the brush to a nearby berm behind me. I barely had time to collect myself as I saw it emerge. It was, well, I don't know what I expected. Not the tall, lanky, gaunt, almost skeletal form that ripped apart a great oak as it approached. It stopped with enough force to shake the ground, horrifying mangled claws digging into the dirt and rock as it steadied itself. Its eyes were sunken to the point of being black pits. Its teeth were jagged, mangled, corroded from disease and decay. Its spine nearly poked through the skin. In some areas it actually did. The Wendigo emerged, sniffing the air and looking exactly towards me. Through the brush and branches we locked eyes. We were just 15 meters apart. It took off towards me and didn't even see my asset I'd laid for it. As it neared only 3 meters from it, coming well into distance, as it was just about to run over the claymore. I rolled down the slope of the berm, covering my head as I squeezed and hit the detonator 3 times. Pucker factor setting in as I saw it move fast enough to cause light streaks. The blast of the C4 charge within the claymore was enough to riddle the ground, logs, half-gut my berm, and destroy anything and everything around it. Well, there's a reason the front of it says, front towards enemy. The 700 ball bearings exploded out like a wave of deadly grey mist, shredding everything from branches, trees, and saplings that were all erased as the entire forest was cleared. In an instant, its dead skin wrapped tight around its skeleton was torn up, shredded in some areas as it looked akin to a torn-up dead flesh blanket covering its putrefied muscles and skin. Its shoulders, torso, and hips were riddled. The beast dropped onto its back as I rose from my cover, taking aim with my AK, my red dot centered on it as I fired. I watched a 7.62 tear through its back, ripping off parts of its exposed spine as it messily took off, its roar shaking my organs and nearly making me nauseous. I took off after it, the entire time feeling like I was marching into one more trap. These things weren't dumb. This was their turf. But they didn't expect to start a turf war with a paramilitary organization. And all it took was 6 pounds of C4, 10 pounds of steel, and 4 parts hate to let it know the stakes had changed. No matter what was around the corner, I had to keep the pressure now. The body of the deformed state trooper, her mangled face. God, that was someone's daughter, someone's wife. I was not going to join her, and no more were going to be taken like her. I let off round after round, effective fire for 570 meters. When a magazine went dry, I flicked it out, replenishing my AK with a new one as I kept pace. The distance was a ways, but it was closing. I didn't relent, and it sure as hell made my pursuit a challenge. Over logs, trees, damn near losing a shin as a drop the size of a sewer enveloped me, I kept pursuing through a ditch that made me feel like I was fighting in supernatural trench warfare. But eventually I found its lair. The black blood burned into the ground, hissing as my low-cut Solomon boots stepped around. My feet kicking what I could tell were wooden boxes and baskets. I assumed then it was just items from its victims. God, I wish I was right. The light of my weapon leading the way, piercing the darkness as I rounded past a curtain, as I found it. Deep inside of the cave, it rested, dried muscles hissing as it was on its limbs, hissing and screaming as it roared, its face falling apart in chunks as it stared at me with only hate and rage in its eyes. I took aim and leveled my rifle. A set of controlled shots from the rifle ripped through its already damaged skull. I'd read up on plenty of stories where old warriors needed daggers of fire to melt the heart of the Wendigo, but I guess this'll substitute. It collapsed, dropping to the ground in a sickening squelch. And I finally let out one hell of an exhale as I doubled over, the exhaustion nearly making me vomit as my tag light bounced around. And I noticed something. Runes on the floor that looked Eastern European and ancient, lining the ground and walls, painted in a shiny, slightly silver substance. What the fuck? I remember muttering as I scanned around, barely noticing the interior of the cave as I pursued it, benches, a table, and where we stood, well, I killed it on some sort of an altar. A single slab of refined granite that was carved flush into the floor. Turns out those items I kicked around weren't the belongings of victims, but whatever residents were here. What the fuck? I looked, the rotten smell causing me to gag as I scanned my light and noticed a slew of rotten flesh, meat, human meat, most recently the body of the other state trooper. All of it was perfectly cut, like some frickin' sickening deli for the damned, next to the spot where it had died. It had fled here, this was its lair, but all of this was too refined. Sentient living humans had to do all of this. Then it hit me. Someone was feeding this thing human flesh. Something had manufactured this Wendigo. My hand shakily rose to my push-to-talk as I contacted Montgomery. Maine, this is November 1. Echo X-ray. Situation has complicated, I said as my eyes centered on a crudely drawn deer's head on the center of the altar. Back at my house, I received not another target package, but a notice from the PEXU higher-ups. There's a theory to some that the increased encrypted, anomalous, paranormal, the lethal encounters of the unearthly kind weren't by coincidence, but by design. Conspiratorial and underground movements predate the wheel and fire when it comes to humanity, and to some, they don't believe the world belongs to us, and that the unholy elements eating away at the membrane of society is the true natural order of the world. Very Wiccan, extremely genocidal. One of the images of them given was a blurry photo of a person in a white robe, stained with blood, raising a gore-covered knife in the air as they wore an all too lifelike deer mask. An Occult Hunter's Deathlog, Entry 2, by Forest Has Eyes. Hey, it's Dwight. Sorry for the gap in time needed to collect myself. Even as I'm recounting what's been going on the past few years, I'm still running operations myself. Although there is this fairly large mission coming up, so let's just say that I'm covering the milestones, but there's nothing saying we can't double back or triple back. Revisit down Paranormal Graveyard Lane, eh? Anyways, shortly after my first situation whiskey, I'd managed to acquire quite the reputation amongst the brass at PEXU for my capability with minimal support in austere environments. Or at least that's what Montgomery told me. By the time I walked out of my first year in the unit, I'd more or less squared up against Parafor at least once in almost every regional sect across the world. The exceptions being Africa and the Pacific. Though the latter would change. The last time I was in the East, I was serving with the flag on my shoulder, and me and my platoon were suffering in 90% humidity in the depths of the Jungle Combat Training Center in Korea, which, coincidentally enough, is where I'd be going back to. Dossier: Nine-Tailed Fox. I'd never been big on Asian folklore, but one thing I gather is that due to the proximity of Japan, Korea, and China, many of the entities tend to remain in the region and prowl regardless of the national borders that each country has erected so sternly. The Kappa were a recurring problem I'd heard about. A consistent source of disappearing peoples the JSDF and the ROK regularly convened about. However, one of the most terrifying that is spoken about only in hushed whispers is the demon that seeks to achieve immortality. In Japanese, you've probably heard of it as kitsune, though in Korean it's pronounced kumiho. What I was sent prior to my departure for the peninsula was steeped in millennia-old iconography, with not so much in the way of recent info. Well, I'd come to find out why. I wouldn't be doing this alone, however. Due to the proximity, the location of the kumiho was to be the DMZ. The deployment of a larger unit would unnecessarily increase tensions with the DPRK, so PEXU had to deploy solo operators. My secondary I'd be rolling with will be a man by the name of Jae Hyun Kim, a survival and evasion specialist and a member of South Korea's elite 707th Special Mission Group, a unit shrouded in mystery and black operations, known only for their high-risk operations. His was a resume steeped in special operations etiquette and proven from what several various pages of redacted previous operations told me, and supposedly I'd done such a good job that this old burnt-out light infantryman was seen as an equivalent. Well, we'd find out if that was true in the coming days. Oh, you know what I hate about flying? Turbulence. You know what's worse than turbulence? Enduring it while you're 30,000 feet over the deepest ocean in the world. I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm stone stoic. There's a reason I never went to airborne school. The flight over, despite its extremely long wait time, was, well, nostalgic. I was on one of those mega-sized, several hundred-seaters, the kind of ones with multiple floors, TV screens on every seat. Well, the downside was I had to ride in economy. Yep, even when you're contracted for counter-cryptid operations, the government still had to save its nickel somehow. I thought back on the predicament we'd found ourselves in, scrapping the top of the budget. Plenty of munitions to go around, but major support was few and far between. As to why, well, I'll get to that later. For now, I just sat back, enjoying the ambience of the Mach 700 horsepower outside as I took in my surroundings. The dark haze from the scenery of the plane, the slight shake every 2 to 5 minutes, the eyes outside of my window. I cracked open a bottle of... Wait, hang on. My eyes shot to the window to my right, my own face staring back as the deep, blood-red irises were consuming. My own smile seemed to creep up the sides of my face as my skin stretched and tore. My breathing seemed to get hemmed up for a moment as I didn't know what to do. My blood ran cold, and I flinched in my seat. And then I woke up. You know that split second of deathly fear you feel, like you're going into freefall? Well, you especially feel it on a plane due to the air pressure and disorientation from turns. Well, that's what I felt as I woke up. Looking around, everything was fine. I pulled up the cover to the window and there was nothing, just clouds, rain, and a slick plane wing. I excused myself to the restroom, which, as a 6'2" American on flights made for people who are on average a foot shorter than me, well, you can imagine how comfortable that was. A splash of cold water on my face sobered me up as I gazed into the mirror. I must have been so stressed, I burst a blood vessel in my eye. Oh, for fuck's sakes. One stress alleviated, another added. I landed in Seoul a few hours later. I guess the singular positive out of whatever that waking nightmare was managing to kill a slew of time. Well, I'm not going to lie, the vivid reality I felt was all too real. I couldn't think about it now, so I compartmentalized it to the back of my mind and swallowed the key. As I made for the arrivals, I ran into Jay. He was a shorter guy, probably 5'7", with a high and tight, black jacket and a set of brown and grey digi-camo pants. "You are Nolan," he said, shaking my hand and grabbing my weapons case with ease. "Yeah, call me Dwight." He seemed to chuckle at the contrast, his active duty sense of formality, whereas I showed up in jeans and my old leather jacket with a Chicago flag patch on the side. "You can call me Jay then." We loaded up in a shiny new Tahoe, pulling out, my eye getting lost in the spiraling highways and streets of Seoul that I barely saw between rotations for training and details, while Jay drew me out of the nostalgia. "So, have you been briefed on our enemy?" "Which one?" "The mythic being on the ones north of the 38th parallel." My quip seemed to break the professional ice between us. Jay handed me a folder and I flipped it open. The first thing to greet me wasn't what I expected. Some sort of rocky beachhead, and the pic centered on a hollow rock that had been split open. "Yeah, what's this?" "That is the Killing Stone. It is nestled in the volcanic mountains of Japan. An ancient evil was trapped within it, the Japanese kitsune. It was placed within an inhospitable place and was sealed for a millennia. It broke open just recently," he explained. I raised an eyebrow. Some of you might have heard of this a couple of years back, but I was still confused. That was across the sea all the way in Japan. What was it doing here in South Korea? Did it decide to get a new view? He reached over, flipping the picture to reveal another, dated weeks ago. It was an ancient metal pot, old carvings from an era long since buried and purged, the top welded and burned shut, split open down the frickin' middle, so much so I could see near 1-inch thick iron cut clean in half. It is not the only one to evade spiritual custody, Jay muttered. Both of them escaped in close proximity. It can't be a coincidence, I said, shaking my head. My mind thought back to Minnesota, to mostly classified operations on the East Coast. Overseas, outside intervention in releasing millennia-old evil was a real and present danger, though. Jay doesn't seem to focus on it too much. Maybe seals are old, however, their blessers have long since left us. Whatever causes does not matter. We have to put it down before she takes more of, her. She? I raised an eyebrow. Yes, in the first week we recorded 24 harvested, he said, pulling off the exit towards our destination. I looked at the date on Kumiho's escape, glancing over. How many is off today? Hundreds. Oh, we made 1,000 stops. The air was cold and the rain was heavy, but we took our time getting to where we were going. Jay had a reason. Concrete morgues and backroads police stations. Every time we arrived, 3 cadavers or more greeted us. What I saw made my stomach crawl up my throat. Their faces were contorted in fear, skin drained of all life to the point it was as black as ash, and their chest cavities were torn open. I remembered this as we pulled up to a rock military police annex. Watching them zip up the body bag slowly, the sounds of heavy rain echoing through the open bay door. I thought these things were tricksters, I said, noting the direct, violent approach it had shown the people as it continued to reap over the land. Jay's eyes were locked onto the body bag as it was loaded into a zinc coffin. The Kitsune are. The Kumiho are a terribly different thing entirely. We are chasing death incarnate, Nolan. Soon we arrived at a village north of Seoul, the noise and pollution from Korea's massive urban center fading off into the distance as all that surrounded us were green fields, forests, and the sounds of trees and wind. The area around the settlement was slightly hilly. Ancient roads had been freshly paved over, while the buildings were a mix of old-school slate roofs and modern and concrete glass houses in between each other. 2 eras were colliding on some of the oldest soil in the Pacific, much like our coming confrontation. The comparison here ate away at my mind. Jay wore a holster on his hip, matching his oh-so-covert military-like attire, whereas I kept my 9 tucked away in my jacket. I let him take the lead as he guided me through the streets. 1,000 years ago, the men and women who locked away the Kumiho lived here, at the seat of this valley. Now, it has traveled in a death march across 85 miles to reap over their descendants, Jay said as he stopped at a T intersection, pointing to the roof just ahead of us. The sloped traditional tar roof was visibly torn up. The intersecting pieces were smashed. Others had deep gashes in them. Now fire clay, the material it's made out, isn't the most fragile material. Ancient humanity knew what it was doing to protect itself from rain, hail, and harsh eras, so to see it demolished in such a way sent a chill up my spine. Jay then pointed to another, then another. Then one of the more modern buildings had the damn concrete cracked and the wire glass windows completely blurred due to the cracks. This was enemy territory, I could feel it. All of these people were living on contested territory by something almost virtually incomprehensible. So, all those centuries ago, this is the place? I asked. Yes, also my home, Jay said, like a weight had just dropped on the gravity of the situation, especially for him, and it set in deeply. I looked over to see his piercing eyes inspecting every inch of the soil. We stood as the last, best chance they had. One creature did all of this, I said. Jay shook his head, staring daggers into my soul. That is not a creature. Its capability is absolute, and it is older than the most early stone of the planet we walk on. He then gestured for me to follow as we rounded the sides of one of the houses, and there I saw it. Claw marks, prints and hand marks that looked somewhere between a horrifying beast and something attempting to imitate a man. They were burned deep into the clay, tile, and stone across the house as it seemed to scale it like an efficient yet ruthless being. "The earth bleeds the longer it is left to roam, Nolan." "Dwight," Jay said, collecting himself. "Well, we'll get it done," I told him with all the reassurance that two guys staring down an East Eldritch abomination could. There was a twinge of a smile. The scream we heard from off in the distance dropped any pride we had as every blood cell we had ran cold. "On me," Jay commanded, hand on his holster as we hoofed it. I knew it. I freaking knew it. When I said enemy territory, this is what I meant. I felt a sickening vindication from my paranoia as I followed him. The yelling continued. First a woman, as we could hear every centimeter of her diaphragm calling out in terror, and then children crying. We reached the top of the hill and rounded a corner. A group of people were fleeing from the front of a 2-story home where a woman had collapsed into the arms of her husband. Jay took the lead, kneeling down as I kept watch. Was it here? If so, we needed to get back to the Vic and lock and frickin' load. But could it already know? How potent was this thing's foresight? I was overthinking things. I scanned the rooftops, saw people peek around alleyways, spying on us or maybe just seeing what was happening. Could it be one of them? The Kumiho was said to be able to take the form of anyone, especially prior victims. I stood over Jay and the couple, hand resting on my iron as I gazed around, anxiety permeating my movements. I could feel like I was being stalked. I knew the burning sting all too well, having done this dance more times than I could recollect. It was watching us, wanting to see how we responded. Jay consoled the woman. He shot up to his feet, hand snapping and unholstering his pistol as I instinctively drew mine. "Yeah, what's the sitch?" I asked, eyeing the building with him, his breathing heavy as he kept his barrel out and pointed towards the door. "She said it lies within. Her father attempted to save the child in the upstairs room." My eyes snapped at him when he mentioned there was a kid in there. "And, the kid?" Well, I knew the answer in my gut. I didn't want to, but I had to confirm. He ignored me for a moment, maneuvering on the door, muttering, "They are already a delicacy." We both flowed through the front into the main living area. I activated a light on my pistol as he did the same. The interior was dark due to the closed blinds. Hucker factor set in, as I imagined it could be anywhere. Golden eyes staring at me, waiting for us to have charged in. Room clearing with pistols wasn't optimal. Jay called out in his native tongue, yelling as he led the way up the stairs, and I followed. At the top there was a door to the left and right. We each chose a door. Jay went left, I went right. I drew short. The kids' room. My low-cut boots could feel the carpet and toy bricks on the floor underneath me as I quickly scanned the surroundings, my cone of light quickly clearing the back corners, the closet door, and then to the bed. A small figure laid on the bed, half covered by a torn-up blanket as light shone in from the window just adjacent to it. Broken glass covering the area around it as the slats covering it were either torn off or hanging. My hands shook from the adrenaline and anticipation as I scanned the bed. The lifeless body of an adult collapsed over it. Oh, there was too much dead space. The closet hadn't been cleared. I didn't know if either of them were breathing or... "Jay!" He quickly charged in after clearing the parents' room, stacking up behind me, and he stopped. I could hear him stifle a gasp. "No," he muttered. My free hand aimed towards the far side of the room. "Closet." He held cover on the center of the room as I moved, whipping open the door. The closet was clear. I turned to see him already approaching the bed. The adult body was pulled off. the body of the grandfather who had entered with a large knife attempting to defend his grandchild, the knife which had been used to cut out his own heart, still stuck in the gaping crater that was cut all the way into his chest cavity. His eyes were void of the colours of his irises, and Jay pointed this out to me with a grimace. I'm translating roughly, but he said, "His young gone. His soul, it is gone." Worst was the kid. The skin was grey to the point of almost being pure black. The lines split open as if they were falling apart. Oh, poor boy. His eyes widened terror as he looked up. His heart was taken the same exact way. Jay gripped the blanket on the bed, face twitching out of anger. I shut the kid's eyes, muttering a small prayer as we left. God, if it was bold enough to do this in broad daylight. Well, we unloaded our gear at a nearby house towards the western edge of town that I learned was Jay's home. I put this together when we entered with duffel bags and weapons cases, and he dropped all of that to hug two girls that ran up to him. His wife greeted him soon after, as did his grandfather. "This is my friend, Dwight." We'd gotten settled, and then Jay ensured we got one of the upstairs rooms to set up Overwatch, as he called it. I unlocked my case and prepped my weapons, an M4 Benelli, semi-automatic shotgun, the Italian special. My MK-18 rifle was here, along with a set of dual-tube night vision. I checked my lethal assets, and I heard Jay call to me from across the room. "Have you got a family?" I shook my head. "Nah, never settled down." "Well, you'd make a good dad, you know," he quipped, preparing his own weapon, an SR-16, a new AR M4-style weapon common amongst special operations. He continued his insightful analysis of my burnt-out being. "I can see it in your eyes. You're looking to finally slow down, yet your heart cannot find the place." "Sure that's not the caffeine?" "I have to warn you, brother," Jay said, checking his body armor and belt. "The Kumiho culls the hearts, and in doing so, the souls of people, to earn immortality. Every life consumed, every memory assimilated, every song ended is another step." I thought about this as I gazed over at the target package resting on the desk in the room. The pictures, the information, the mythology, and then Jay's own words. Hundreds already consumed. Well, if it hadn't achieved immortality already, then it was going to be an absolute pain in the ass to take down. "Well," I said, holding my 12-gauge in my hands, "it's a good thing we came back by superior firepower." Our last moment of respite came when I was invited to dinner with Jay's family at the table. His father sat at the head, both Jay and his wife flanking him as their kids sat with their mom. I was told to sit at the other end as the guest to their home. They served me japchae. His wife told me it would heal the soul before a confrontation. Well, honestly, I think I'll be going to Korean grills more often. Damn, it hit in a way that I hadn't felt in a small bicentennial. I was drawn from my all-too-Americanized devouring of their food by Jay's father. "You're in the American Army?" "I was, sir," I said, policing up my respect in a way that had Jay and his wife chuckling. The old man's eyes were that of slick granite, welcoming yet with a wall of stoic confidence behind them. "Once a soldier, always a soldier," Jay said between bites, in a way that had his wife slapping his arm and telling him off for eating while speaking. After everyone in the village had settled down for the night, remaining indoors even on the weekend, a pseudo-curfew was in effect, we got to work. I pulled my plate carrier over my jacket, slinging my rifle to my back as I kept my shotgun at the ready. I pulled down my night vision as the dark, shadowy rural village we were in became bathed in a wave of blues and whites that illuminated every corner, dispelled every shadow. With the natural moonlight aiding us, we were in business. I stepped out onto the darkened streets. The wooden steps creaked with every movement I made, so I could hear my boots impact the paving on the roads. The entire area was deserted as I scanned, a piercing feeling of impending contact. "Radio, check." I heard Jay's voice come through the radio. My free hand slid off my shotgun to push talk. "This is November 1, loud and clear." Silence returned to my headset as I scanned around. The only audible sound was my gear rubbing up against my jacket and the rocks underneath. Even the small river that ran nearby got even more silent. All of the crickets, birds that had been there an hour prior were gone. "I am in place," Jay said, taking an overwatch position on the top floor of his house. I swallowed hard as I continued to scan my surroundings, sticking to the walls of buildings as I prowled through the darkness. "Damn, it's too silent out here," I muttered into the comms. A moment passed before he whispered through, "Then it is here. Prepare yourself." Suddenly a loud snap and crash occurred in the distance, causing me to pivot 145 degrees towards the southeast. I quickly took off, the muzzle of my shotgun leading the way as I navigated the tight corridors and walkways between roads and buildings. I think I saw it. You'll be coming right up on it," I heard Jay message through. The crunch of grass under my boots only grew louder as I rounded a corner. Only to see nothing. The slight shake of a large roof tile as it rocked on the ground, surrounded by fragments of clay. I scanned the area, and then up and around. "November 1? My breathing was heavy as I looked around. "Nothing. You got anything?" "Negative." Silence followed. My blood ran cold. "Hey, you there?" I asked back. I spun around. Dark trees surrounding the town that seemed to be more impermeable than usual. My night vision couldn't pierce it. I backed up, just a small bit. The sting of being observed followed. I looked around and then a gut feeling caused me to spin. At the peak of one of the rooftops, a set of piercing golden yellow eyes scanned down at me, sizing me up. My jaw clenched and I aimed my weapon. The sound of a wrenching scream from someone directly at my 9 o'clock drew my focus. Nothing. I scanned back. They were gone. Oh, it was fucking with me. It had me out in the open, and it was trying to gauge my reaction time. Knowing it was inevitable that I would engage, I switched to my rifle, slinging my 12-gauge back, not trying to deconstruct any houses and anyone who might be within them. Almost immediately I heard the crunching of tile as I took aim, the laser mounted on my rifle allowing me to aim under night vision. It was heading towards the center of the village. I kept pace, but the silhouette darted across roofs at unimaginable speeds, barely a flash or a blink. All the while I tried to take aim, but nothing. I rounded a corner back onto a main road. My barrel immediately dropped as I came face to face with a kid. My boots scraping as I stopped, holding out a hand. "Yeah, easy. I tried to calm him. I didn't know Korean. Jay was currently unreachable. "Oh man, you need to get back indoors." I pointed to the houses around, my eyes still scanning. I should have known something was up when the kid didn't even flinch at the sight of a fully armed American with multiple weapons. I just thought it was something cultural. I spun around, rifle aimed, and then I looked back. "Kid, you need to..." The smile on that thing's face, stretching to the point where the flesh should have torn, eyes wide and piercing into my soul. I didn't notice at first as I was scanning other sectors, but it was the kid we'd found in that upper room. My rifle immediately snapped to the creature who stood there wearing the visage of the fallen. The laser was slightly shaking as I backed up, not wanting to take my eyes off it, and then a series of shots ringing out from the west caught my attention. That was Jay's weapon. Then, through a broken radio transmission, "November 1, Alamo. Alamo. It was code amongst PEXU units where whatever safe haven had been established had been breached by an enemy force. His home. Oh, my eyes snapped back to the thing, and it was gone. Just a set of beast-like claws burned into the road. Oh, God damn it. Well, I raced back to the house, front tiles falling off as the upper window had been breached. I called out, "Jay!" No answer. My barrel was raised as I pushed through and entered. One-person room clearing is hell and is almost always a death sentence, but circumstances be damned. "Friendly's entering," I called out. It was our running password to avoid fratricide. The main living area was clear, save for someone huddled in the corner, Jay's wife. "Hannah," I called out, arms wrapped around her legs as I reached out, her eyes staring at me in terror. "Hannah, it's me." She backed up slightly, shivering. It looked like you." I stopped as I realized all the commotion from the top floor had ceased. I raised my weapon and aimed for the stairs. "November 1 to Kilo 9. Status." Well, Jay didn't respond. "Hannah, do you have a place you can hide?" I asked, only to be answered with manic sobs. Great. Just terrific. I approached her, taking her hand and helping her to stand up. Just then the sound of the side door opening caused my hand to snap to my pistol, drawing it and aiming it at Jay. "Dwight!" he called out, his rifle raised as he aimed it at me. I aimed back. "It's me, Jay." I could tell he needed it to be proved as he stared back through his night vision, my pistol aimed at him. "Show me your eyes." I flipped up my night vision and he looked. Then he followed. They were normal. As I was reupholstering my weapon, his face went pale though, seeing who was with me. "Dwight, Hannah is currently in the room with our boy," he shouted. My throat went dry as my head turned, only to be looking into a set of golden eyes, a sinister grin that bore several sets of sharpened teeth, and a smell of death and lavender. Immediately her hand ripped from mine, slicing through my gloves on the way and causing me to grimace as I stumbled back. This Hannah screamed in a way that made my mind bend, my eyes watering as I reached for my rifle. I opened up with a set of shots, my suppressor snapping. She lurched forward and swiped at me. Its 4-foot-nothing frame shifted, sending me flying back onto the front doorway. My head slammed against the wall, knocking me silly as I watched Jay take aim and fire. The thing reverted to its truer form, the skin and face melting in a weird spiral as it dropped and took to all fours, with darkened flesh, golden eyes, and 9 tails behind it. It smashed straight through one of the closed windows, crawling up the side of the house. I looked down to my chest. A single strike managed to almost completely punch through one of my armor plates, crushed ceramic and polythene spilling out like a white dust, along with cutting deep into the receiver of my rifle. Oh, for fuck's sakes. Yep, so that's how I lost my first rifle. Still angers me to this day. I dropped my dead-lined MK-18 onto the ground, picking up my shotgun and checking the chamber. "Are you broken?" Jay shouted. I shook my head. Nah, still kicking. A crash came from upstairs, and the scream of Jay's son followed. He roared angrily as he charged up the stairs, and I followed. What played out next happened in the matter of seconds, but it felt like an eternity. Don't know if it's because of the adrenaline or just being near the thing. Jay charged in first, rifle raised as the thing stood over his son, who was cowered under his bed. The Kumiho stood over him, one hand peeling the bed up before dropping it as we approached. All darkness and ambient light seemed to meld with it, as if it was both everywhere and nowhere. With my buckshot, I couldn't get a safe shot. Jay fired first, impacting its sternum and causing it to pounce forward, the claws puncturing deep into his front plate. He struggled with it, and I could see him grimace beneath his night vision, trying to shove it off as his rifle became trapped between them. I had to act. I pressed my muzzle directly up to its hairy and mangled skull and pulled the trigger. A small shockwave of the contained discharge and buckshot impacting corroded flesh, sending silver blood flying out as its screech caused me to feel nauseous. With a swipe of its right hand, it ripped one of my tubes off my night vision and slashed into the right side of my face. There was barely any warning, no disgusting tearing sound, just a single swipe of air and half of my face became unzipped. Well, I guess I earned a new scar. My own red iron was blinding me now, causing me to cough as I was flat on my ass. The entire side of my face stung as if it was on fire, the kind of pain you only know by being there. Well, not gonna lie, don't wish that shit on anyone. Some, maybe, but not all. Even as the impact sent me stumbling backwards, I slammed back on the trigger, pumping it full of buckshot, the shots causing it to let go of Jay, who fell back into a dresser. My glove became drenched as I tried to clear my eyes. I caught a glimpse of what was next. From the shadows, a silver knife impacted the back of the Kumiho. My eyes followed to see Jay's father twisting the blade. Whatever it was made of hurt it bad, and caused the area around it to start hissing with steam and fire. I also saw it duck down and slash backwards, gutting the old man's stomach. The sound of mulched flesh and meat pouring onto the floor as he let out a single, pained gasp. Jay cried out in anger as he fired his rifle, a hail of rounds tearing through that being that was falling apart now, dark flesh melting the floor as chunks fell off. By this time I'd risen to a knee, wiping off crimson as it caked over my face, taking aim with my pistol. A light show of flashes, both in IR through my still-working tube and in the darkness from my other eye. Snaps of 9mm were joined by 5.56 as we slowly cut it down, and soon enough its golden eyes stared into my soul as it melted into a pile of mess and evil, eating through the floor. The adrenaline dump quickly left us as the wet cold from the outside chilled both of us to the bone. I let out a shaky grunt as I viewed the remains of the creature. So much for immortality. Hannah ran up the stairs, scooping up her son before crying on his head. Jay did as well. I stumbled towards the old man, flicking up my beat-to-hell nods as we locked eyes. There was a strange chuckle in the man's voice, seeing my face torn open to the point where I'm definitely sure I could feel windage through my cheek and, well, the state he was in. I couldn't hide the look in my eyes staring at his pulverized belly. He knew it. A shaky nod in the man's face as he gripped my hand, and I held his, staying with him until it fell from mine. Jay walked over, a shaky breath in his voice as I stood up, and our eyes locked to the hissing crater in the floor that was once the Kumiho. A millennia of violence and torment ended at the barrel of human determination. "Yeah, Jay?" I asked, shakingly getting to my feet. "Call it in," he muttered. I looked at him. "You're a mission. You're home." I wasn't going to take that from him, not after everything he'd given and lost. I slowly closed the man's eyes as I heard Jay through my damaged peltors. "Main, this is Kilo 9. Op 4 actual is down. Preparing proof of echo X-ray." I remained in South Korea for the funeral service, shortly after getting my face patched up. The loss of their grandfather weighed heavily on Jay's family, but with the Kumiho put down, it meant that their people could move on. PEXU estimates that nearly 500,000 succumbed to its wave of death. That's just the confirmed ones. Those that went missing alone on trails, in rivers, of whom local police wrote off. Well, it's a miracle that we were able to put it down at all after the long night. We parted ways, and he told me if I ever needed him, simply call. In this industry, I may have to take him up on that offer one day. I would several times. I remember the phone call from Montgomery not long after that. I got a few weeks off to heal up my injuries. You know what they don't tell you about facial injuries like that? How much it freaking burns in the upper atmosphere. Don't know if it's the moisture, but it was a long flight back to the continental 48. On the bright side, I got to relax at my house. I bought it shortly after my departure from that company I used to work at. My prior encounters before PEXU left me a little more than paranoid of the deep woods, and with my previous employers looking to catch me off guard, I knew I needed a place of quiet, open isolation. Well, I got it, with a few caveats. The house itself was a 2-floor ranch house that came with a large plot of land near the Rockies. Simple, quaint. No one for a few dozen miles. The first weird sign was the fact that it had a foundation underneath that was nearly as large in area as the structure above. That and the fact that there was nothing on this place. No hauntings, killings, murders, nothing at all. Like it just dropped out of nowhere. Despite probably the better judgment of anyone else, I took it. Used a variety of tools to renovate and fortify it, and a small arsenal to guard it. Some days are peaceful, others, well, not so much. The day I got back, I remember pulling up to my front porch in my SUV. A strange, grey thing on my front steps. I kept my hand death-gripped on my 9 as I exited my vehicle and approached. For safety or otherwise, a large amount of my property was lined with bear traps. Now, here's a hint. They're not for bears. So when I strolled up and saw all of them, and I mean all of them, all 12 were bent and warped together in a fashion physically impossible with no weld marks and beyond what any tools could do, and placed in a fashion too intentional to be an animal. Well, I looked around, noticing the air outside was a lot more stale than when I'd left it. There was also no wind at all. Well, let's just say I made sure not to look outside when I heard scratching on the sides of the house that night. You'll find the Great Plains, Oklahoma, and especially Appalachia are regions where you just don't acknowledge some stuff. It was hard for my Chicagoan brain to come to terms with the outside being lined with gashes too deep and too high to be from any local coyotes or other critters. Or the handprints that started to appear on my banister or the sides of the house, a slight embed just deep enough to be noticed. One of them also appeared on one of my windows, making me have to replace the entire thing. Fucking jerk. But for now, it's a weird symbiosis. The land likes to desecrate my house that doesn't exist on any public records. I stubbornly remind it that I'm not going anywhere by paving and painting over anything it does. Well, I guess it's time to get back to the prior faction I'd mentioned. Remember when I said we were in a war NATO and other governments had been fighting for decades? And that wasn't an exaggeration. You know how many have survived this long in this cursed world? Well, answer, by being a stubborn species and forcing it to back down, and thus a balance occurs. We've been dealing with these damn things, entities, not myths, real living things that have been around since before Pangea and the earth was cooled. Yeah, all the way back with swords and hatchets. God bless our ancestors. Recently, though, an escalation has occurred. World leaders got comfortable in the routine of covering up strange occurrences, attacks and incursions under the guise of gas leaks, mass shootings, accidents, trying to hide the unnatural under a sense of conceptuality. The problem? They lost the narrative quickly. Well, I've got another question for you. What's a cult? A group of unwavering devotion and ambition, misguidedly dedicated, usually in a religious sense, towards a leadership that screws such effort and sacrifice for all too sinister purposes. Well, the movement designated the Blackwood Brotherhood meets that definition to a T. Theorized to be the descendants of ancient Wiccans and ritual practitioners from ancient Europe, their modern incarnation bears that of ancient shifters under the guise of an elk or a deer's head. And they're smart, extremely smart. And the powers that be decided to blame everything on natural disasters. They tripled down and festered distrust. If all these accidents keep happening, then who's to blame? The government that promised to protect you. Federal entities couldn't just walk it back and say it was an occult outbreak in Louisiana or a skin peeler in Navajo territory, could they? Answer, no. Every cult has their public face. The New Advent is that answer. Originally a humanitarian movement funded by rich backers of whom not one thing could be traced, they offered refuge to all those who had been affected, whose loved ones went missing by the hundreds of thousands every year. And like moths to a flame, they flocked. Yep, the invasion has already happened. Soon every state, every town has people who believe in the New Advent. Churches, mosques, they're there too. What about those powers that be? What about them? Many cut and run, looking to outpace our mysterious adversaries, or, well, others went off the grid. I remember when I got that dossier and flipped through. There's no knowledge on their leader, if there is one. Could be 1,000 cells joined together in a single consciousness. It'd match up with the ideals of the Remover, ancient Russian pagans whose ideals align all too similarly with the cult. What do we know? The New Advent is being pushed by a man only known as Ryan Evans. An unsuspecting survivor of the tragic disappearance of Tipton, Indiana. Coming from a Rust Belt family, he and his wife donated millions to helping people recover from such horrific occurrences. In a world of disasters, anxiety, war, Ryan Evans' slicked-over black hair, young and warm demeanor provided all the reassurance to a world looking for protection. He's got a loving family, gets down and dirty, runs an extremely charitable tech company. Everything is so perfectly lined up and manufactured. Ryan Evans died in Tipton, Indiana, and whatever crawled out of there isn't a man anymore. But it's charismatic enough to lure people, and because of it, millions wear those golden wristbands, raise their hands and praise an all-too-consuming movement. PEXU was the short-notice answer, led by a disavowed former NATO chief, staffed by those who had come close to the silent apocalypse we're fighting and losing against. What do they do to their followers? What sacrifice do they ask for? Well, that shifting video showed me enough. An insider amongst the ranks of the Blackwood managed to sneak out the video after they were whisked away to a lodge deep in the dense woods of New England. In a room soaked with blood, the log walls and floors lined with glyphs, sundials, and other markings corrupted beyond measure. A group of white-cloaked, deer-headed individuals and candles around a man stripped of all clothes, screaming as his skin began to split. Bind. You have trusted a nation or God that saw your family and memories as a statistic. Bind. Have you sat in the dark wondering why your potential was wasted? Bind. Do you hear the call of the shadows and wonder if they're correct? Bind. They are correct. Bind. That's what was best for you. He is here, he's waiting for you. Join and we will save you. Bind. Open the door. Bind. All of them screamed like sociopaths as that man screamed, pounding the floor as his body bled. Skin peeled back to, I don't know what I saw, but whatever crawled out of him wasn't a man. The sender disappeared shortly after it was leaked, and despite it, not a single person believed it. Except PEXU, of course. And that's what we're fighting against. Anyways, that's probably enough for today. I'm hearing something outside. I'm going to take care of it. I'll be back soon with another update. Until then, stay safe. An Occult Hunter's Deathlog, Entry 3, by Forest Has Eyes. Well, this is Nolan, signing back on. Now, sorry for the pause, things have been getting a little hectic, as it were. I'll try to cover it when I can, but for now actions are still taking place. And so in the interim, time for another trip down memory lane, Louisiana. I want to say this was well into my second year with PEXU, nearing the 3-year mark. Time gets convoluted as the government-sponsored disposable dozens of missions a month. Target packages the world can never see the beginning to pile up in the back of my house figuratively, and my mind literally as the weight of everything began to settle and press down onto my shoulders and soul. Well, Can't tell you the amount of early morning or late nights, running off adrenaline and caffeine, marching off to every corner of the States and the globe. 1 week in South Korea, the next headed to Canada to deal with something that came from northern Michigan. The next, well, let's just say something was lurking within the smoke of a large forest fire and harvesting all those who ventured in to stop the flames. Honestly, I think I was going insane. To be fair, I probably am, though functionally at the very least. Worst was, every time I came home, it was feeling less and less safe. Now, a good example was when I woke up one morning and decided to make myself a cup of coffee. Honestly, that was what probably did it. A bad omen. Anyways, it was heading into the fall of that year, so I could feel the cold of the Rockies seeping through the windows. I went out to take a look on my porch, and I saw them. Birds. Well, I live in an extremely rural area. Shit, with some of the installations I made on my house, I'm practically off the grid. Animals are to be expected, but not the nearly 200 dead birds I saw laying around the front of my house. All of them were backs to the soil, eyes wide to the sky, wings and legs curled up like a wave of death had hit them. Well, I nearly dropped my coffee and backed in, holding my breath as the first thing that came to mind was some sort of pathogen or chemical agent. The Blackwood Brotherhood targeting PEXU operatives on their home turf, though minimal, was not uncommon. The unit sent some people out and analysis showed that, there wasn't any sensible cause of death. No, legitimately, it was just like they stopped, dropped, and died from what the shrink said is shrink the right word? Lab tech. Well, they're deep into animal science and forensics and... I'm rambling. But the point is, it was damn near impossible to even see they were dead until necrosis set in. What's worse? I don't think it's the cult. And like I said in a previous entry, things have been weird around here. More handprints have been appearing around my property. Approximately 250 meters from my house is a wood line across the field. On an old oak that's got more rings than most countries got decades on this earth. Well, here was another handprint. This one was gaunt, elongated fingers that burned a good centimeter into the tree. Another one similarly appeared on my rain duct, like someone had attempted to climb it, though further inspection of the roof showed no more. I know what this was. The same thing the Mouj and the Taliban did. Sizing up, probing for weaknesses. I went back inside and kept my rifle loaded. I wasn't going to blink first. I was almost overjoyed when I got the call from Montgomery about my next op, although I didn't know the madhouse I was walking into. You see, the things we're largely in combat with can't always just be shot. They're incomprehensible and primordial, and while we were regularly in the trenches against situation whiskies, terrors in Appalachia, and fighting a conspiracy, sometimes we're up against things that warp the world itself. Dossier: Louisiana, Umbra. Oh man, where do I begin with this one? Well, in short, I was being assigned to an area deep in central Louisiana, rich in voodoo and black magic, so much so that this place is stained, and plenty of occult experts would tell you that you don't fuck around. I wasn't just fucking around, I was being told to rappel down and start kicking. Ever since Katrina, there's a large amount of backroad areas in Louisiana that just haven't recovered. Infrastructure and basic necessities are constantly faltering. Quality of life is lower than some third world states. It's bad, and the town in question was more or less forgotten about by the local country. The town's population had been decreasing ever since reports of loved ones returning and wandering the streets started to occur. At first, it was a handful. Then entire houses started turning up empty. The local police station was so undermanned, underfunded, under everything that they were neglected. All signs pointed to something that had been harvesting these people, in an area where the veil between our realm and the other thinned. Something had crawled its way onto our side and it got past PEXU, and then assigned to me. Terrific. Worst part was, it was, in Montgomery's own words, "I wish we could provide you with more, but we're down on manning and we can't confirm what the nature of the situation is. We'll have you on ISR every second. Call me if you need me. I can't say I was all too pleased to be going to a backroad swamp town nestled in Black Magic Alley that was slowly being devoured by something. I can't also say I had to front my own transportation on this one, meaning it was a crispy 20-hour drive. What I will say is it gave me plenty of time to think about everything. My mind drifted back to the events that led me here. My time in 10th Mountain and the 4 deployments from hell. I think it was while passing through Oklahoma that I saw something that shook me to the core. It was this out in the literal middle of flatlands nowhere, past a native res just a few clicks. While I'm buying some fuel for the road when the cashier hands me back my change. Gold wristband, logo of the new Advent written on it. Well, I sped the fuck out of there. This guy had to have not left his zip code in the last 20 years. This place barely had a power line, and yet there he was wearing that wristband. So many people were. I saw a few at the airport when I flew out to Korea, Canada, even Germany. The pit grew in my stomach. The world we knew was slowly being consumed by something. And time was running out, and I feared the brass didn't have the manpower to stop it. I still don't, and I was right. Things got real weird when I passed the state border into Louisiana, groggy and tired. When I pulled into a rest stop and caught some winks. And the dream I had was weird, like vividly weird. I remember feeling shit in the dream, tasting stuff. The cold of my AC back in my house, my sheets, the disgusting taste in my mouth. I woke up in my own bed. Well, actually, I was sure the entire drive was the dream, an hallucination brought on by sleep deprivation. So much so, when I glanced around, I felt the world come back, and I remember rubbing my temples before I heard it. Dwight. A female voice. Someone I remember. She was an old friend of mine, a colleague who'd helped me before I joined PEXU. Roseanne. I couldn't mistake that British accent anywhere. It sounded real. The echo down the hall. I looked at the closed door, unable to talk. My lips wouldn't move. I tried to get up, but I couldn't. Dwight, she said again, no inflection in her voice, and the warning signs in my head were tripping as the door just pushed open. There she was, tan skin, dark hair hanging over a seat of wide eyes with needle irises. I could feel my entire body panic as she sprinted towards me, eyes as gold as the new Advent's banners, face contorted into pure hatred. I snapped away so hard in the driver's seat of my RAV4, my chest hit the steering wheel, causing me to cringe. Oh, I said. Yeah, caffeine nightmares are a trip. Well, honestly, I don't know. You ever forget someone's voice till you hear it again? So much has happened. I'd forgotten Roseanne's tone until I heard it there. Hadn't thought about it in literal years, and something had drawn those memories back out. I looked at the clock. A hardy 30 minutes had elapsed since I went to sleep. Good enough, I suppose. Pulling into the area several hours later let me know the kind of shit I was getting into. Dense forests that were still cold and humid from the previous storms surrounded either side of the interstate like an impenetrable wall. All along the way were overgrown shacks, rusted-out cars, vehicles abandoned, some turned over. Road signs hanging off wood poles that pointed towards roads that had long since been abandoned. Yeah, this was central Louisiana, all right. The town in question had seen better days, and that was at least somewhat alarming, as it had been a while since the epicenter hit this place. And yet the power lines were still sheared and hanging. No sparks meant they were dead. Windows broken, entire sections of house walls falling off. People still walked the streets, off in the distance, before disappearing behind corners. It was broad daylight and yet seemed as dead as it would in the pitch dark. You could almost see the slight dark mist hanging over it, a weird flicker at the edge of your eye. This wasn't inhabited by us anymore. No, something else had made this its lair. First point of contact was the police station in town, and, well, yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I didn't even think it was the actual police station. It was a small 10 by 10 meter concrete square building on the corner, bordering a small lot of gravel, rocks and debris. Old bars had rusted over the smeared windows. The literal word police was painted over the door and had begun chipping off long ago. I pulled up to the curb, opening my door to get a blast of the wet cold, soon to turn into humidity. A hint of mildew and oil rot in the air as I walked up. The only patrol vehicle had cracked windows, with almost all the tires flat and empty. Approaching the door, a single sign read, "Until further notice, all law enforcement responsibilities are to be directed to Louisiana State Police Trooper." Well, there's supposed to be someone here. At least, that's what I was given. I checked my info again and saw a code. 0432. I scanned around and, sure enough, a small lockbox I found hidden behind a bucket that I kicked away, causing it to roll down the sidewalk with a large echo. Inside, a large set of keys and a laminated sheet with a set of addresses, and written on the bottom, "Good luck." Gee, thanks. I might be up shit's creek, but at least I've been given a fork. Well, the first few addresses were situated in the center of town, something I thought would give me comfort, but I soon realized the extent of the harvest that had been conducted. Cars were either gone or abandoned, some parked half on the curb, others rotting in their driveways. Bushes and shrubs were overgrown. Sidewalks had more weeds than, well, sidewalk. This place had become a borderline project left to decay, the swamps having reclaimed it as humanity had been driven out by something. I parked along the road, stepping out, and concealed my Glock, though if I needed a short, quick, violent run back to my RAV4 would provide me with heavier firepower. The keys provided were to select addresses, although I'm sure had the cops still been around, they might as well have given me a master key to the neighborhood and let me start looking. Regardless, I walked up to one of the single-floor houses, placing the key in and, well, the lock wouldn't give. Too much rust. A single mule kick to the door, and a few more months off my knees, and I was in. The smell of mildew hit me immediately, damn near suffocating. Dead air is lethal, so I brought along a simple rebreather to keep my lungs clear. Windows had been broken open, like on many houses, exposing the insides to the elements, yet there were signs that whomever had been here had vanished. Sure, things were kicked around by either animals or the wind and rain, but the table had been set up for dinner that had long since gone rotten and fused to the plates. Toys were still on the floor, a lounge chair kicked up with a remote on the seat. The imprints of people burned into the chairs, onto the table, in the lazy boy. Well, I've got a stomach for many things. Trudging through sewers with a pistol chassis and a light, looking for beasts, that's fine. Burn pits took my sense of smell anyway. Look, the sound of a shot impacting a target. The screams, the blood. Look, I'm infantry. I'm desensitized to that. Scraping a person off a swamp-drenched seat, knowing they used to be a man or a woman or a child. Well, I'm not going to lie. I wasn't too prepared for that, but I guess I've hit a new milestone. Placed it into a collection bag, left the house, and locked it behind me. Sample analysis from it read, dried flesh and sulfur. Well, it was like this for several blocks. House after house, the same thing. Old homes turned into ruins. Streets deserted. Felt more like a post-apocalypse than a silent one, but here I was rummaging through the aftermath like a scavenger. It was around the third house that I'd left. No signs beyond silhouette imprints and rank smells. The shuffling of grass caused me to turn on a dime, hand sliding to my pistol grip, to see a dog. It was a Belgian Malinois. I knew because I worked with them a lot as military working dogs both in training and overseas. German Shepherds are terrifying, but they've got nothing on the absolute man-killer of these things. Grey and black fur, built like a truck, yet its coat was messy and unkempt. It seemed hesitant, wary of me as I looked at it. I had an idea. The old bag of jerky I had seemed to bridge the gap, and I took a few minutes picking barbs and twigs out of its fur. An old worn red collar showed he'd been wandering these streets by himself for a while. The name read Zeus, from the Hartwell family. When my eyes turned to the house I just exited. Inscribed with letters on the door-side mailbox. "Well," I said, scratching behind the beast's ears. By now his spirits had picked up. "Want to ride along with me for a bit?" I was going to place down a towel for the mal, as Zeus was still soaked in the outside swamp water and probably had ticks, but at this point I'd been wandering through mildew-infested houses, tracking stolen souls for hours, and I just about had enough. We pulled up to another house, more towards the southern edge of the town. As we did, Zeus started to growl. In hindsight, the capability a canine brings in terms of identifying threats, something I should have invested in earlier. Keywords are here, in hindsight. I took a step outside of the vehicle, not wanting to drag the poor dog into plaster and wood mausoleums. So I approached the house, which was just as unkempt as the others. Placing the lock into the door, it was pulled right open, causing me to stagger. The person on the other end was a woman. Long blonde hair, hazel eyes, probably mid-20s. She raised an eyebrow and, in a southern Cajun drawl, asked, "Can I help you, sir?" I was somewhat flabbergasted, looking around to the dead neighborhood and then back to her, and I didn't have a response, because, to be honest, I'd been sent under the pretense that the homes I was searching were empty. But this one was not. I stammered a bit. She seemed annoyed, and then smiled. "You're from the government, ain't you?" I scratched the back of my head. Yes, ma'am." She invited me in, and I did my best to dry my boots off, as the house was far more maintained on the inside. I noticed this. Storms must have done a number to the town. She chuckled and didn't look back. "That's life here, mister. So tell me, what's you looking for exactly?" Took a look around, observing the inside of her house. "Reconnaissance so far. Trying to gauge what's going on. More than a gas leak, but gas leak. It's one of the official terms we use to play off events, preventing mass hysteria, and it also draws out to see if someone knows more." Well, she did, seemingly. "Gas leak ain't caused those screams, honey." I raised an eyebrow, turning back to her. "Screams?" She nodded, standing by the sink in the kitchen, washing her dishes. "Got the neighbors a few nights ago. Heard them and their little baby crying out. Then the ones adjacent. Some down the block. Like fireflies slowly going out, though you can hear every decibel." Her tone was chillingly gleeful describing this. I raised an eyebrow, my hand sliding under my jacket. Did you reach out to anyone?" She shrugged, and I could see the flicker of a smile from behind her, standing a few meters away. "Things don't work like they do in Chicago, Dwight. Sometimes it's best to look the other way and keep going. If you survive, it wasn't your day." I then noticed the water that she was using to wash the dishes was black, corrosive and dirty, borderline septic. The counter was also far more chipped and cracked than it had been, and the walls were peeling. The carpet was mangled. Then it hit me as my eyes locked onto her and my hand gripped my pistol. How do you know my name?" She turned, hair greasy and hanging over her face as her expression was blank. Her eyes were normal, but something behind them, an intention that was malicious, evil. Her lips peeled back to reveal sharpened and worn-down teeth as she screamed, pushing the limits of her vocal cords as she lunged. I drew my Glock. And then I was back in the driver's seat. My barrel clanged on the windshield as I found myself aiming with my hands over the steering wheel. Where I'd been exactly 7 minutes prior, door slightly ajar with my foot sticking out. Zeus had begun to bark like a maniac. First I thought it was me, and then I saw that they were staring out the passenger window at the house. I looked. Couldn't see anything through the smeared windows, but I could tell it was still in there. This was a warning. Get out, or become a statistic. Well, I wasn't backing down, but I needed more information. I took 5 in the parking lot of an old restaurant, a burger joint I'd passed on the way in, possibly the only one left. Zeus was gnawing away at a burger I'd gotten him. I couldn't eat right now. Nor was it ever good to have a full stomach. I'd learn later that that would be the right decision. My radio was hooked up to the wave relay mount on the back of my RAV4, boosting the signal so I could reach PEXU Main. Montgomery and I spoke as I half sat out the door. "You're saying it can, manipulate reality," the Brit spoke. I rubbed my temples, keying into the mic. I'm saying one moment I was in the house, about to be jumped. The next, I'd gotten rewound about 10 minutes back. A moment of silence passed as he responded. "Check your ATAC. I've updated you with contact information and a location for someone nearby who can help you. Originally, we were going to have you meet later, but we're pushing the timeline forward. This is growing out of control." It already was out of control. Copy November 1, out. The contact was... Okay, so you remember how I said Haitian voodoo and black magic was big in Louisiana, especially around New Orleans? Just my luck, or more his experience, that made him one of the last people still in town, alongside the diner worker, the gas station rep, but certainly not the landscapers. His hideout was one of those under the convenience store stairwell type spots, a small window with an LED sign that read, "Jacques, the Bone Lord." I looked back at my ATAC reader. The address pointed to here, coordinates and all. The name was Jacques Delong. I swore if Montgomery just fed me to some organ harvester, well... The door opened, so I could see a man, late 50s, peeking through, wearing a leather coat and jeans. A set of blue lens glasses concealing tired eyes. He looked to me, then to Zeus, then back to me. "No animals." I shook my head. "I'm not leaving him in the car. We already paid you." The tense stare was interrupted by the closing of the door, and the sounds of several dozen locks being undone as he opened it fully. "Dog stays on the corner mat. You go to the table," Jacques muttered. Well, where do I even begin with this place? Well, he wasn't called the Bone Lord for nothing. Skeleton parts seemed to line or dog every piece of furniture, furnishing, and even make up a few shelves as the smell of incense in the dimly lit shop surrounded us. I leaned forward onto the round table, taking note of all the calcium artifacts. "These aren't real skeletons around us, right?" I asked. Jacques sat back in his chair. "Does it matter?" "Guess not," I said, sliding the sample from before with a printout of the details. "You journeyed into these homes?" he asked, realizing the situation with a surprised raise of the eyebrow. "Yeah?" I asked, though I should have been wiser to what he was meaning. Jacques flipped up his glass lenses and looked at me. "I never ventured that far. Every time I tried to cross to see what had made this place taboo, it felt like a hand was clenching my throat," he said, gesturing towards his neck as he continued. "Suffocating. I've been trapped here since. This place is no stranger to rifts, but something must have crawled out of one." "Something?" I asked, a confused raise of the eyebrow. Jacques shook his head. "I've been looking into this since I could barely walk, and even then I will still never even know 1% of the other side. Imagine a microbe attempting to learn about humanity. That is the depth of which we face now, Nolan Dwight." "So, I said, leaning back. "What? We've got no idea of what this is or how to stop it." Jacques waved off the defeatist take and pulled out a map. If I were to guess, an Umbra. A what? A leech. Someone attempted to contact the other side. It lashed on and pulled them in, used them as a line to cross through. Now it's free from its fast. It's growing fat on all those who surround it. Jacques then laid out the map of the area and drew a circle showing the extent, having now crossed far out of the borders. Did you experience any more of these warps? The not real parts in time? He asked. Once, crossing in from Oklahoma, I said, remembering the rest stop. He stopped, took a long swallow. We need to seal it away. I know where. I raised an eyebrow. He pointed to an old complex just to the northeast of the town. Old warehouse, previously used for lumber to carve into the swamps. You know the Trail of Tears? He asked. I was confused, but I nodded. One of the old routes ran through here. Many sick or wounded left to die. Others, later slaves, buried in the same cemetery. A whole lot of death. Only wooden markers denoting their resting spots. Now, paved over and forgotten. Even that laid abandoned. Jacques' retelling had his words grow more and more pained as he finished. And so what? All of the deaths, I said, putting the pieces together. Then he laid it all out. Yeah, must have attracted something. I hear them every night, Nolan Dwight. Old generation and new, begging to be set free. Thought I was going crazy. Well, they were ghosts, but you saw the aftermath. We need to end this, please. Well, he was trapped here, unable to leave, as the threshold had surrounded his entire house. Well, I wasn't as tied to the other side as him. No leashes to drag me down, and it already showed that it was afraid. If this Umbra was feasting off all of these people like they were batteries, I was going to have to go in there and undo it all. The route took me to a drop off the side of an interstate heading north from the town. I popped open the trunk and retrieved the essentials, pulling my plate carrier over my jacket, pulling on my belt and clipping the leg strap of my holster. The final touches were checking the light on my rifle and slamming the trunk shut. I stopped when I looked at the passenger seat. Zeus was barking, scratching at the door. Practicality said to leave him where he was safe. However, part of me didn't want to leave him here. And another wagered that, in some respect, he knew what was down that muddy and gravel-filled drop into the woods, and wanted some payback of his own. I opened the door and the Mal took off, forcing me to hoof it down to catch up. Zeus, for fuck's sake, I called out, causing him to stop at the bottom as he stood firm, ears up and looking around. I stopped behind him as he hugged one of my legs, my rifle pointed into the brush. From the trees, they were looking at us, the disheveled, haunting forms of people just behind the bark bodies of the forest, staring at us. They looked almost normal, but not quite. Some parts of them were blurred, other parts I swore were intact, but decayed. Oh, they were both dead and alive, stuck perpetually in whatever this weaponized hell was for them. My optics red reticle traced over them all. Surrounding us, as I took stock, they were sizing us up. We weren't relenting, so the air grew stale, and the only sound to greet us was the sound of rain dropping off the trees. And then, one of them took off. My rifle took aim as I shouted, "Stop! Stop!" Though it was more of me doing my part as I fired, and the round tore through them, and the thrall melted in the same decayed slop as before. Then all of them began to converge, sets of 2 to 3 shots as I switched from target to target. Zeus jumped onto one, a larger man, sinking their teeth into the neck and tearing them apart before they too melted into the same state. My rifle went dry, forcing me to draw my pistol. A couple of them reached out, silent screams as their jaws were wide open. One slick motion, My barrel was level and a set of rounds cracked off and the nearby area was cleared empty. We had to move. Zeus and I took off down the trail, still being chased as I took aim, firing shots standing, braced against the tree, giving us some breathing room before we reached a clearing. I staggered out, Zeus sniffing the air as he growled. I messily reloaded a new magazine, the old one hitting the forest floor as I slapped the bolt release home and aimed my rifle. The forest was quiet. The only sign of anything besides my firing on the trail was a hissing line of decay marks burning into the forest floor. "Oh, fuck's sake," I muttered, topping off my Glock as I looked down to the Malinois before I quipped, "I need to get a new career," to Zeus. Well, the dog simply looked up, none the wiser to what I was saying. "Yeah, you're right. I should just shut up." I turned back to our target then, a gigantic skeleton of rusted metal supports and sheet wall, standing just above the trees in the dense forest with cracked concrete and stone surrounding it. The warehouse. Oh, my rifle was raised as I approached, Zeus having taken up some sort of roving circle around me as I made for one of the closer entrances. Moss and leaves hung above through the cracks as water kept pouring down. A gigantic, cracked concrete foundation floor with an empty shell of a building surrounding it. The old structure groaned and cried out as I looked up and around, seemingly nothing to greet us. Zeus, however, was too busy sniffing the floor, digging at the concrete as I turned, asking, "What? Smell something?" Well, Jacques did say it was built over a mass grave. Only question was, how to get through several feet of old concrete. I lowered my rifle and measured my options, opening the phone mount on my carrier to switch open ATAC and see what assets I had available. Though I didn't like the idea of sitting there for several hours waiting for a cutter or a... "What you're looking for isn't here, Dwight." I was drawn out of my planning by a voice from behind, one that I knew very well, though it didn't click when I heard it as instincts took over and I turned to aim my rifle, but, well, what I saw was an old soldier and a friend wearing dirty, outdated UCP digital fatigues. He stepped out from behind an old factory machine, still the same, just like the last time I saw him, a decade and a half prior. High and tight brown haircut, square jaw, shorter, stockier guy. His name tape read, Clancy. "What the fuck?" I asked, my barrel lowering out of shock. There he was in tan boots, a slight smile on his face, just like I remembered. As he took a step forward, my sense came back to me, as did Zeus's rabid growling and barking. Clancy's face contorted to that of hatred and rage. That was enough to sober me up as I took aim at him. Well, Clancy didn't like that. "Dwight, what the hell are you doing?" I shook my head. "You didn't make it out of Kandahar. I don't know what this is, but I'm not going to let you disgrace my fucking friend like this." I took another step forward. My thumb flipped my rifle to semi. The single sound caused it to pause. "I gave you a chance, Nolan." I shook my head. "Don't do this. Let him walk away and come fucking face me yourself." A moment of silence passed. I took a single shaky breath and fired. The firing pin hit the primer as the barrel sunk and a shot ran out. And he was gone. I was looking dead at him and he was just gone. There wasn't a pile of decayed mess underneath. His body wasn't there. Another frickin' illusion. Zeus ran forward, barking loud as I heard a single crack, and then another. Then the concrete gave out, crumbled. My stomach had jumped straight up and grabbed onto my throat, damn near, as I went into total freefall. The light above grew more and more dim before I hit the ground hard. The combination of rocks and dirty made me glad I wore side plates, as I did what I could to brace myself. Zeus is barking from above, pulling me slowly out of my shock as I staggered to my knees. I grabbed my rifle and turned on the light. I soon realized the sound I was hearing wasn't water falling, but melting. They were all here, hundreds fused and melted together in some hideous form of old, decaying flesh. 1,000 eyes and 100 mouths all crying out as a grotesque form of several limbs all around a central mass stood in the darkness. There it was, the Umbra. Fuck, was the last thing I remember saying before staggering back fast enough to avoid it as it lunged forward. One of its limbs had a dozen skeletal, rotten hands grabbing out, clutching and scratching at the dirt as the sound of flesh falling off their bones made contact with the stone and filled my ears. I flicked my rifle onto auto, firing off a burst into it. Flesh and meat tore from its central body as all of them screamed loud enough to pierce my eardrums. Well, thank God for my ComTag headset. And then it moved, faster than it ever should have, as I leapt to get out of the way. However, one of the side limbs used its 1,000 hands to grab onto the back of my plate carrier, dragging me to it. The sensation of a dozen indentured, trapped lives being used to try and tear me apart made my spine crawl right out of my body. I fought to move forward, then got dragged onto my ass as they all started to tear at my jacket and kit. Still, I fired into it, tearing off parts of the arm and body as I stomped fingers and palms, causing them to melt off as pools of rotten flesh. From above, I heard Zeus's roars getting louder. Remember when I said Muller noises were crazy? Well, I wasn't kidding. Those canines will leap through reinforced glass or smash through a fence to get to their target. I guess Zeus had de facto adopted me as his partner, or designated it the enemy, because he leaped onto the top and began to tear at its body. Oh boy, did he tear. Skin flew as it writhed. A muzzle thumped my barrel into its body and fired. It retreated back so fast Zeus fell off and onto the floor, although it did little to stop the dog as he'd proven he's built durable. Well, it attempted to flee. I looked around at the mud and old concrete piled around us in this strange lair, and it retreated further. Zeus barked, not backing down. Get back here, I shouted. I took off after it. I flipped my rifle's magazine out and slapped a new one in. Zeus was not far behind as I aimed my light and took shots at the form as it fell apart. The voices started to get dimmer. Didn't know if that meant it was getting further or if we were cutting off more parts of it. Suddenly, we were bathed by darkness and I fell through a door. A literal door onto a carpet. I was back in one of the houses. I shot to my feet, seeing the layout of one of the homes I'd cleared earlier. I looked around. Surrounding me, as they sat on the couches, the chairs, at the table, were those taken. I remember this house exactly as they were right when I'd analyzed their places. God, it was keeping them here, trapped. It wasn't going to trap me. I sprinted forward towards the back door. Zeus nowhere to be seen as they took off after me. I kicked open the back door and jumped through. This time I was in where I wagered the police station was. The small grey square building had maybe 2 cells on the inside in stereotypical barred cage setups. 2 officers in the dark blue uniforms of local Louisiana cops sat up from their desks. I fired at one, only doing so because I knew this wasn't real. Full disclosure, I don't just shoot cops. And as they dropped, melting through the desk and corroding it to cause it to collapse, the other one leaped at me, gnashing their broken teeth. They grabbed my pistol, leaving me with one option. I reached for the center of my plate carrier, drawing my bench-made knife and stabbing them through the bottom of their mouth and into their brainstem. Kicking them off, I ran for the door to the outside and put my shoulder into it, then realized it opened inwards and swung it open as I sheathed my blade. What hit me was something I didn't expect. A blast of cool air nearly blinded me as I slid and fell, my ass hitting the dirt slopes of a mountain, deep in the southeastern region of Afghanistan. I aimed my rifle as I could hear it, the sound being so vivid I felt like I was 24 again. The distant pops, the rumbling, the high-altitude smell. I was on an old road, I remembered. I took off forward, knowing the exact trail. I kept my footing careful, as I didn't want to lose my step, or I'd be taking a 3,000-foot drip down the fast ward. Instead, I rounded the corner to a cave entrance. Over a decade ago, it was an old listen and operation post for the Mouge we'd had the job of taking out. My first mission as a newly promoted squad leader. I remember staring into that black abyss just as I did now, and I marched forward, and for the final time find myself falling through darkness. Then a set of teeth grabbing at my jacket sleeve as Zeus pulled me forward, dragging me from a drop-off into the cave onto an old set of stone tiles. I quickly tossed my rifle up as I grabbed the edge, pulling myself up. It took a moment to get my bearings, scratching behind his ear and saying, "Hey, thanks, bud." I used the stock of my rifle to push me back up to my feet as I scanned around with my light. An old mausoleum. The sound of tearing and wet splashes could be heard ahead as we both pushed forward. In the central room, with the light shining from the morning sun coming through the bars, lay the torn mass the Umbra inhabited. The remaining eyes in the fleshy mass looked to us, screaming out as I took aim and fired. The full auto burst punched straight through the center as it attempted to reach for us. Zeus grabbed on and bit. Then I stomped down and fired at its arm, tearing it off. As my Malinois took great pleasure shaking the writhing limb to death, I reached into a dangler pouch on my plate carrier and dumped a bag of salt onto the thing. It crackled and hissed as I lit a match and set it alight. Jacques said he had a theory it was an Umbra. No way of telling for sure. When in doubt, salt and burn it out. I forced open the iron gate through generations' worth of dirt and grass clumped up. Zeus took off as I dropped my mag, loading a fresh one and firing into it. I slammed the gate shut as it grabbed at the bars and reached through, screaming more and more as it slowly melted into nothing but char. The last set of eyes met mine as I watched it die. No more souls would be trapped. No more people would be harvested. No more memories were getting replayed like some sick fucking remix. Ugh, fucking shit, I said. A glorious exhale as I walked away, replacing the burnt flesh rotting stench in my lungs with crisp forest air. Zeus followed. I set my rifle down on a tree, leaning back as the adrenaline started to wear off, and I could feel the freezing amount of sweat I had after the ordeal. It wasn't perfect. The area still smelt and felt like death, but the suffocating fog of dread had worn off. After a quick look around, November 1 to Maine. Up for actual is Echo X-ray. Sometimes you've got to persevere. Though let's just say I'm in no mood to go back to Louisiana anytime soon. Regardless, it was probably the most vivid, as whatever it was, Umbra or not, made those blasts to the past straight out of the cerebral theatre. It was not something I was looking to run it back at, and I told Montgomery as such. But he put it best. We don't have the luxury of choice right now, and when we're knee-deep in problems and burdened by short-handedness, a few weeks after Zeus acclimatized very well. What, you thought I was going to leave him behind there? Absolutely not. No, that dog is the reason I'm still around, for better or for worse, so the least I could do was get him out of there. Turns out, yes, he did have fleas, a lot of them. Fumigation of my car and then the cleanup was extremely nice, as you could imagine. However, he enjoys the open area of my property. Even more so in the following weeks, I ended up taking him on several more missions. Whatever his senses are, he's able to point out a threat immediately. He's as much of an asset to the small unit I've got going as he is a friend. Though, well, some mornings I'll walk outside to grab my paper and bring him with me. Zeus will stare out into the fields with his ears pointed up like he's seeing something, and then he'll growl. The first time he did this, I noticed the area was silent, just like it had been before. No day gets any easier. Out of the frying pan, well, you know the rest. Gotta go now. Got another target package rolling in. One that I should be able to update you on as soon as we've caught up on some of the big stuff. Well, for now, this is Dwight Nolan. See you all again next time. So, my dear friends, a lot of clamouring for this one to continue, and that is episode 3 done and dusted, but a lot more to come. So I'll be doing this maybe next Monday, maybe in a couple of weeks' time. It's nice to give you a little bit of time to absorb everything that's going on before doing the next episode. But I will keep putting them together like I am doing now, so each time there's a video, it'll add the next episode onto the others, as you seem to enjoy that format too. Well, that is enough for me. Back again tomorrow night on this second channel with my podcast. If you're not sure about that, go check it out, Dr. Creepen's Dungeon. Thematically arranged groups of stories from this channel from the past few years. Anyway, go and check it out on YouTube or anywhere where you get your podcast, to be honest. I'm pretty much everywhere with that. Anyway, so this one will be continuing again in the near future. Till then, very, very sweet dreams, everybody, and till the next time. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. Really means a lot to me and to the author of the story, of course. Well, if you want to know more about me, I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can download my music on SoundCloud. I've got a Patreon if you feel like. Throw me $1 or $2. Very much appreciated. And of course, on Reddit, I have a place where you can leave stories if you want me to read one that you've written. Well, hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams. Bye-bye.